Welcome to week number 14 of BurnerCast. It's the only podcast where we talk anything and everything hot air ballooning. Hi again, everybody. My name is Joey Strutz. Alongside me, we have one of the hosts tonight, McKenna Seacrest. Our other host, Brad, decided to go out to the ball game tonight. So he is not joining us for this episode, but he will be back next week. McKenna, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. We have a few bad weather days, so taking a break from flying, but doing great.
Tonight is a very, very special episode. We are previewing the first BFA-sanctioned Team U.S. National Championship in almost 20 years, and we're going to be doing it with some of the competitors from the event itself. Since its creation in Battle Creek, the Team U.S. National Championship has been one of the most exciting competitions to watch in ballooning, undoubtedly. I know Brad grew up watching it. I've seen, clips of it. I've seen the competitions and the Canton event over the years, but this is the first time in 20 years that they're bringing back the nationally ranked, full shebang of everything. And it's really cool to see. Tonight, we are welcoming one of the teams that is competing to win that title, and we're going to be talking to them about how they're planning on tackling that challenge. Please welcome team number 9, consisting of Todd Isley, Matt Fenster, and Chris Smart. Welcome to the show tonight, guys.
Thank you.
Hey, Joey.
It's great to have you guys on. This is our first episode with 3 guests. We've had 1, we've had 2, we've never done 3, so this is a big experiment for us as well. So the first thing we're going to talk about is we're going to kind of just go down the list. We'll start with Todd, then to Matt, then to Chris. First thing we're going to talk about is how did you guys get your starts in hot air ballooning?
Actually, Joe, I started, I think, back in 77 or 78 when the original nationals were in Indianola. And at that point in time, we had neighbors that flew, Rob Bartholomew, Ed Bowles, and my grandma and grandpa loved balloons. And so we volunteered our vehicle and we started crewing back then.
Yes, so me, also starting in Indianola, Iowa. I guess I've been around balloons my whole life. My grandparents were from Indianola, Iowa, back when the balloon field was there at Simpson. We would go over there and just watch balloons. Eventually, my grandfather, he had was part of the Kiwanis. The Kiwanis had a Kiwanis parking lot there. So then I started helping them park cars at the Kiwanis field or parking lot there at the field. Eventually got on a crew and they just happened to hook me up with Rich Jaworski at the time. Did that for a few years. And then he said, hey, it's time for you to get your license. So then I got my license and I've been a pilot since 1994. As you guys know, Todd and I ran that race for a while. So it kind of came full circle of learning it to all the way coming around being balloon meister there at Indianola.
All right, I got my start 1989. The company I work for was buying product off of this business. When I went out to pick up the product, I seen this huge wicker basket. I had no idea what it was. Asked the guy what that was all about, and he told me hot air balloon, and if I'd like to be on his crew, if I crewed 8 times, I'd get a ride. And I'm like, that sounds pretty cool. Had 4 young kids looking for something to do. So I started out crewing for a local guy here. And in 1991, he asked if I'd like to learn how to fly. Of course, I told him I had 4 young kids, couldn't afford it. He said, I'll make you a deal. I'll train you to be a pilot. Once you get your commercial license, you'll fly all my passengers for 2 years and I'll take all the money. So that's, I said, sounds good to me. I was flying his stuff. And then that's, I did that for a couple of years. A couple of years later, after that, we split the money, and then I decided to venture out and get my own balloon. And I actually started my own ride business. Mainly what I did is just rides, doing rides all the time up until about 2009 when I started competing. So that's how I got my start.
That's awesome. It's always great to hear how people got into ballooning and all the different ways. And I guess all of you have kind of been flying for a while. Or what made you all want to start competing? I guess we can go in the same order.
That's an interesting question. I was in the golf business for many years, went to college, played golf, had relatively, had some success and had back surgery in 97. And that kind of put a stop to that, and got back into ballooning in 2004, just ordered a balloon from Rob Bartholomew, and that just kind of has taken the competitive void that golf couldn't provide anymore just because of physical ability. And once you kind of got into that and you get to meet guys like this and go around and meet other people throughout the country, I just think it's kind of snowballed for me.
And I'd say for me, it probably is that Indianola background. When I first started crewing for Jaworski, he was winning Indianola at that point. He'd won a couple years. And so that's what I first experienced when I kind of got into ballooning. It was just that competitive aspect. And even going over to visit my grandparents and all those years at nationals, it was always competition. That's what we were going to watch. So, that's just kind of what I thought was what ballooning was. I mean, I really didn't know about giving rides and all those different type of things that I got into later on. It was just that competition aspect. For me, I've always been competitive by nature, played sports growing up and everything. And similar to Todd, just having that need to fulfill some of that type of stuff with the competition piece was certainly there. The challenge, the constant learning. For me, probably the greatest thing that ever happened for me was Rich pushing me to go to Battle Creek. We were talking about Battle Creek when we were in the breakout room there, and Battle Creek just made me a better pilot. I mean, that is a tough place to fly. The trees, the winds, all those type of things. And here I'm up there with about probably 50 hours of flying up there at teams and just getting thrown into it and not knowing. And there was many times I was in the air wishing I was on the ground because I was a new pilot, but I just kind of figured it out and I just got better at it. So.
Well, I'm quite the opposite of Matt. My whole beginning was just doing rides. It was all about doing rides, making back some money to pay for expenses. I kind of had an eye on competition stuff, and the only competitions I really did was county fairs, simple stuff. And like I said, like 2009, super great pilot Paul Petrin started on me about coming to the nationals, and at that time I thought, well, I'll go crew for someone, and I seen Dale Wong and Steve Jones both needed crew, so I signed up to crew for one of those guys. And then next thing I knew, I got a call and said they were going to allow some Fiesta pilots to fly alongside, and Paul thought that would be a great way for me to learn about competition by seeing the task sheets and all that. So I said, okay, really reluctant. And then next thing I know, it was a week before they called and said they're going to allow there wasn't that many Fiesta pilots, so they were going to allow the Fiesta pilots to actually join and be competitors. So I went in there blind. I had never seen a task sheet. And it was funny. I still remember we were out in the hallway, first morning of briefing, eating coffee and donuts. And we were just out there chatting, and all of a sudden everybody disappeared and it got real quiet. I'm like, what? Didn't know where everybody went. So I went into the big meeting area, and you could hear a pin drop in there. Of course, everybody was looking at their task sheet, entering stuff, and I'm like, what am I doing here? So I mainly got my start in this top level competition by Paul Petrin, and he helped me a lot in the beginning. He don't help me so much anymore.
So, Todd, as the captain of the team, we understand that the captain really got like a big part of, forming the team. How did you go about putting together your team?
Well, I don't want to call them restrictions, but the framework that they gave us was, what we had to deal with. So when that first came out, and to be honest with you, I really did not have any thought of going when it first came out. I don't know. I don't know if I'd have to, Matt, I don't remember if we were on the phone one day and he's like, we should probably look at this, and, you're an A and I'm a B. He always talks about the teams that they had back in Battle Creek. And I'd be very honest, no experience in a team event. Anybody that flies around us, when we go either at Indianola or Nationals or wherever, we usually work in a team atmosphere. So we've usually got 3, 4, 5. Heck, it used to be, we'd have 7 or 8. And it's always fun to hang around people that people that you work with, people that you trust in the air to give you, feedback. And so I think that's just kind of how it started. We kind of talked about it. We said, okay, A and a B, and we had to go look for a C. And I had reached out to a couple guys, and they were going to get back to me. And in the meantime, Chris had sent me a Facebook Messenger and said, hey, I'd be interested if you needed somebody. And when those guys got back to me, and we jumped right on Chris. So that's kind of how it came together.
So what qualities do you take into account when looking for other team members?
My buddy
nice.
Matt
Be
just
nice,
started.
Todd.
What's that?
Be nice.
I would say the biggest part is getting the feedback. I don't think you want to go into something like that. And once again, I don't know, because this is going to be my first time. I'm assuming Chris and I are going to rely a lot on Matt, because Matt's been there. He's had success at a team event. But when we fly, I've got to think, the way that we communicate in the air with our normal people that we group with, I've got to think it's got to be similar. I think you can't have somebody that likes to dive bomb and come in at a rapid pace, and versus somebody that just likes to do the old, I'm just going to gently guide this thing in here. I think you've got to have some like qualities, because that way when you're given the feedback, I think that it's got to be the same for everybody. And I think, I know Matt and I fly together, and I've been around Chris multiple times at events. And I don't think, we're the type that are going to come barreling into something. And, when we give a win to each other or what we're seeing, I'm hoping that, we're flying similar, so that way it helps us.
So Matt and Chris, you've both flown and won under the team format before. Matt at the 2001 Team Nationals in Battle Creek, and then Chris at the 2019 team competitions in Canton, Ohio. Do you think that you guys' former success at these team events is going to give you any edge at this year's Nationals?
For me, I think it will, not so much about the winning piece, but just being there before. Having that experience and that type of competition and just flying it numerous years is certainly a benefit. Kind of echoing what Todd was talking about, teammates and stuff like that. To me, communication is the number one thing. Be able to communicate on the ground, being on the same page, crews being on the same page, and then particularly in the air, just knowing where each crew is going to be, communicating wind direction, all those different type of things. In the air is going to be extremely important. That's probably, to me, that's probably the number one piece of it. I can tell you from my experience back in Battle Creek, we had, there were flights that, even the year we won it, there was a flight the year we won it, we won it because of the communication that we had during that flight. We were 2 miles away on a hare and hound, and we ended up coming back together and just working it back in, which was huge at that point. So communication. The other thing I think Todd alluded to too is flying styles, having similar flying styles. I've flown around Chris a lot, but this will be different just because we've not had to do the same type of things together. So that communication is going to come even bigger. I know what to expect from Todd. I don't know yet what to expect from Chris, even though I know he's a great pilot because I've seen his results. So it's just going to be different than because we haven't flown around each other a lot. So Chris, I don't know your thoughts.
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with how well you click with each other. I've had some different teams in Canton. I worked hard to get two of my good friends, the Mitchell brothers. We all fly very similar. And we finally were all able to get together in 2019 and make a team in Canton, and we did very well. But you feel that you click together. Some pilots, they're good pilots, but it's like Matt said, communication and being able to know what the other one's going to do, who's going to do what, who's going to do the other thing. And if you have to have one that's a risk taker to do the difficult task, you got to know who that is. And it's all about everybody's minds clicking together on how we're going to attack this task, I think. So James and Steve Mitchell and I, we really click well together. And I think Matt and Todd, we're going to be very similar. I've seen both them guys fly, and so I'm excited to be able to fly with them. I got lucky really that Todd still had an opening and picked me up. So I'm very grateful. Looking forward to flying with him and having some fun.
Cool. Yeah, I don't know you all super well, but it does seem like you all have similar mindsets and fly similarly. So I think that'll work really well. So Todd and Matt, you both flew in Shreveport during the brief stint of holding the national championships. So what are some of the challenges that Shreveport presents compared to other areas?
Go ahead, Matt.
We were actually just talking about it a little bit, very similar to Longview. For the most part, the flights are slow. It's hot. I have remember one morning my computer shut down and I was just literally just dripping sweat in the basket. And I looked over and the little temperature sensor in my basket said 104 degrees. So, and that was at like 8 o'clock in the morning, and just the humidity and stuff like that. So the challenge of the weather, like I said, a lot of really slow flights, typically speaking. And then, the city itself, you got Barksdale Air Force Base, you got their other airport there. It's a big city. So you're usually flying across the middle of town. Power lines everywhere. There's not a buried power line, I don't think, anywhere there, from what I remember right. So there's just lots of challenges about the flying space at all. Then you throw in tasks and 50 other balloons. It can be a challenging place to fly, but a fun place to fly.
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing in adjustment coming from the Midwest is, typically you don't have the low level jet. And if you do, it's there. And then by the time that you land, it goes away and it goes to calm. It's just the opposite of what we're used to, where it usually comes down to the surface. And usually even in Michigan, when those things are clicking, you get one chance at it. When you come down, that's it, because you can't get up and correct, where you've got to have a different mindset as you may have to correct 2 or 3 times down there. And that's a different, especially when you're coming from the Midwest and you're not used to that. You just got to be a lot more patient. And sometimes that gets frustrating more than anything else. Because you want to get there, and man, you're stuck. I remember one flight when we were at Nationals, I don't know if that was a last year, Matt, but I think they called a 4 or 5 part task, and I don't think anybody made it to the second target. Just because the winds went to nothing, and literally there was balloons, I'd say in a 5 or 6 mile range, because there was no direction. It just went sideways.
So moving on, kind of involving, the difficult flying area of Shreveport. What strategies are you guys exploring coming into it? Based on launch sites, taking off near each other.
Matt? Chris?
That all depends on the task. Sometimes you have to split up. It's not. I know it's not every task. You're not going to be launching at the same spot, because some of the tasks, the targets are going to be spread out, and there's no way if you launch all at the same spot that you'll make all of them. So I think it's going to depend on what the task is called. Maury is. I love flying Maury's task, because he told me from the beginning, way back, and I think it was up in Battle Creek. He said he wants guys to get to the targets. He's not trying to trick anyone, trying to throw a wrench in there to where it throws you off. So you just got to read his task and determine how are we going to attack this. And we may be all three in different spots for some task that he calls, or we may all be in one spot and take off, with a 5-minute spread between us. Because there's no sense in a team coming into a target tangled up together. It's hard to tell what you're going to have to do depending on what the others did if you're all coming in at the same time. So there's a little strategy on how to do the task depending on what it is. So.
No, I was going to say the other thing. As I was looking through a lot of the tasks, I was amazed how many have changed since back in the Battle Creek days. They've added new ones. Back then, I think we only had maybe one flight that we weren't taking off together that, Chris was talking about. I expect that to happen numerous times this time by just looking at the tasks. And again, just going back to that communication piece, that planning on the ground, knowing where everybody's going. I could even see the potential to maybe teaming up with, even though you're competing against some other teams, but maybe partnering up with another team. So your A's are together, your B's are together, your C's are together, because it's always good to have extra communication up there, particularly when you're off flying, completely different type of tasks than your teammates. So I think a lot of that stuff may play into it as well.
Good point.
So talking about tasks, what types of tasks are you expecting to be called or hoping to be called?
I think I can speak for Todd for this one. As little of electronic tasks as possible would be great, because we from the Midwest really like to throw baggies. That's our thing. When you start throwing in cakes or donuts or, angle tasks, all that kind of stuff, it usually frustrates us. We've gotten significantly better over the years because we've had to at those type of things. Todd's gotten great at it. But we like to throw baggies. So anytime we can throw baggies, the tic-tac-toe board, those are always fun, where each balloon has to go to a different spot, things like that. We enjoy that type of kind of stuff. But like I said, throwing baggies, that's what we want to do. So if Maury's watching, Maury, let's throw baggies.
So if not yourself, I don't know how much you guys have looked at the other teams. What teams competing do you think are most equipped to win the event?
I know when I looked at it, the team that I think is the team to beat is the Bloom and Donner. I think that is a crazy strong team. I kind of laughed when I saw Brandon was a C pilot. I'm like, really? Or maybe it was Corey or one of. I just was like, that's a really strong team, because I've seen them fly. They know their stuff. You had Donner in there. It's like, holy cow. I think that's going to be a good team there. And there's lots of other ones that are going to be really good too. But that's just the one that when I saw it, I was like, wow.
If you were laying money down, it'd be tough to go against 3 Hartzels on the same line too.
Yeah.
Is there 3 on there now? I thought there was only 2.
There's
I think-
Rhett and Lucas are on the same team, and
Yeah, I
then
saw that.
Joe's on a team with
Oh,
Gary
you're
and
right.
Brandon Heaven.
Yeah.
No, I would have
But I
called
still-
one right away.
Yeah.
Either way.
Anytime that you see any of those names on the line, they've got a chance.
Yeah, those guys got all kinds of experience. I mean, all the Hartzels, the Donners, the Petrons, those guys, they've been doing this so long, you can't count anyone out, no matter who's on their team. Everyone that's going didn't get there by not knowing what they're doing. So everybody there is very capable. It just depends. And it's just like anything, NASCAR, basketball, whoever makes the least mistakes is going to win.
So the last thing we're going to do today is we have fan questions and panelist questions that we ask every guest that comes on the show. So we're going to kind of keep it moving in the same order, Todd, Matt, Chris, and just go down the line on these. So our good buddy Blake Aldridge, he asks this every week to every guest. What is your favorite Marvel movie?
I don't know that I've watched a full Marvel movie. How sad's that?
No, that's been on par kind of with most of our guests.
My guess is I'll let my buddy Matt answer that for me, because I'm sure that since he's a big time administrator, he's probably watched them all during classes.
Exactly.
Him?
So with that, I'll say Endgame, just because that's probably the most recent one that's come out and I've watched. And it was one of those shows I had to watch like 2 or 3 times because there were so many subplots I was trying to follow it all. So I'll give an educated answer on that one.
I'm going to have to say, I think the only Marvel movie I've ever watched was Spider-Man. So I guess I got to go with Spider-Man.
Do you guys have a favorite post-flight meal?
Yeah, 12, and probably a nice cold Busch Light would be the only meal that us Iowa guys drink, Joey. I don't know if anybody that watches this that knows us would not expect any different answer than that.
Yeah, if you're talking about liquid, it'd be Busch Light and Bloody Marys after the flight. That's kind of the typical after most competition flights. But if we're in Indianola, it usually ends up a lot of times at Cross Cafe with some onion rings. That's usually a great place. About any brunch spot, you got to keep the crew happy and keep them fed. So, and we typically have some very large guys that we're trying to keep happy.
Did you say pre-flight or post-flight?
Post-flight.
Okay. I was a little confused there for a minute. Post-flight, definitely, if I could get a good steak and some crab legs, that'd be that'd be later in the day, but definitely nothing before the flight besides water and maybe a banana.
I will tell you, Todd's favorite place down in Louisiana is a place called Walk-Ons. That's pretty dang good. They got some great break and wrap shrimp and some other stuff down there.
So the next one we have for you. So all professional athletes, they get a walk-up song. They're getting a song as they're walking up to the plate, going out onto the court. If you were to get a walk-up song going into a balloon event, what would you choose?
You're up, Todd.
Well, I would probably have to say a little Thunderstruck.
I would say a little Guns N' Roses, maybe Welcome to the Jungle.
Well, anybody that knows me knows what my song would be, and that would be Fireball.
If you could sit down and have lunch with any ballooning legend, past or present, who would it be and why?
I'll go first since some guys are thinking. I think I always wanted to hear Joe Kittinger talk, and I missed I missed a couple chances to hear him speak. That guy has a lot of stories that would blow my mind. So I think I'd like to sit down with him and talk about some of the crazy stuff he's done.
Yeah, there's lots to choose from. Obviously, Kittinger would be good. I've always said Steve Fawcett, just because his crazy stuff he did around the world would be interesting. Bruce Comstock, sitting down with him sometime, because of all the things he's done, would be amazing. I also think Sid Cutter. I actually crewed for him a couple times, and so looking from the competitive aspect and just kind of going back to ballooning, how it first began, or competitive ballooning, and that would be interesting to have those conversations.
Honestly, I think I would go more recent, just because of things have changed so much in the last, even since 2004 when I started. I always thought it was fascinating to have a conversation with Jim Burke. Just to pick I would just love to sit down and pick his brain of, when he's setting up an event, and you get the wind sheet and the target's not anywhere along those lines, and you wonder, where in the heck did you see this, and how you come up with those, and then the stories that he could tell after the fact, I think would be, off the record, of course, of all the things that he had probably seen.
What is the first event that you flew as a pilot?
Whoa. Well,
Mine was River City Roundup here in Omaha, Nebraska. I got my balloon. I actually drove up Thursday night, picked up my balloon, inflated it, and drove up to Sioux Falls after work, got back probably at 1 o'clock in the morning, went to work the next day, and then went to the Kmart parking lot and inflated it for the first time to look at it. And then I didn't have enough hours, so Kathy Ludenberg flew with me. And that was my first event that I went to with the balloon, just local here. So.
I don't remember, to be honest with you. I want to say Matt was might have been a Tumwa. Wasn't that would have been before the first event before the Classic in 04?
Yep.
Does that sound right?
Yep.
I'd probably say a Tumwa.
I believe my first event was Van Wert, Ohio. It's only about an hour away from where I live. I got there, I was late. I seen balloons were taking off. I knew one pilot, Jerry Hall, from many years ago. I seen him and I thought, I'll just follow him. He knows what he's doing. And of course, we were a long ways away from the target. And afterwards, I asked him, I said, what were you doing? Because I got here late, thought I'd follow you and get to the target. And he goes, you don't ever want to follow me. So that was a good lesson on my very first event.
What is one of the biggest things on your ballooning bucket lists?
I'll go because Todd's still thinking there. This is just like flying. He waits and then makes me go first so I can be the pieball. There's really no difference. So Chris, you'll learn that about him. For me, I guess personally, there's probably two things. One would be actually getting to Worlds on my own. I've gone to Worlds twice, crewing for Todd, but I've been close a couple times, but would just like to be able to make the team. That's probably one of them personally. And then the other piece would be my son getting his license. He turned 14. I guess he's 14 and a half now, and he's ready to go. When he turns 16, he wants to have it immediately. So, I kind of see that future of ballooning, and that's truly kind of where I would like it to be. So he's, like I said, he's 14 and a half. He's probably got 200 hours in the balloon right now because he flies most competitive flights with me when I'm not at nationals. So he knows what's going on. So it should be fun.
I think I'd like to fly over the Grand Canyon, like the guys just did here not too long ago. That'd be really cool. We've been trying to plan a flight from over Lake Michigan in the wintertime. That's very doable. It's just getting all the logistics together and the weather working out right. But definitely scares my wife, since it's winter time, being over an open body of water like that. You're not going to survive long if you end up going down in the water. But I think that's very doable, and there's a good group of us that we will do that one day.
I would agree with somewhat of what Matt said. You know, my 12-year-old's right behind Eli. You know, Spencer's in the basket basically all the time with me, except for when we are at nationals or we'll be at team nationals. But you know, one of these things that I think we've ever done is, you know, get qualified for worlds, you know, been to Brazil and Japan with Matt, just keep getting qualified and having fun and going to go see those spots that you know, there would be no reason ever to take your balloon over there and fly. And to see those two things that we've been to, you know, those are things that I'll never forget. And so just keep making those memories, you know, and hopefully, you know, we can be crewing for our kids someday if they'll have us, if they'll, you know, trust us in the cockpit, so to speak, in the van on the ground.
So the last one we have for you guys is, what advice would you give to somebody that's aspiring to compete in a team competition one day?
I don't know that I would say so much that it has to be a team competition. I would just say in any competition, you know, I think you need to go in there with some realistic expectations. You know, in that first year or two, it's okay to just go and learn. You know, when I remember my first couple of years there, I mean, I felt like a fish out of water many times of what in the world am I getting myself into? All I'm doing is looking at this darn computer in my basket. I'm not even flying my balloon anymore. But I think you need to pair up with, you know, like individuals, people that you trust, that you can communicate with, so you can talk through these things, the tasks, you know. And I think that's one thing that the team atmosphere is great in. And I think we do that a lot in our normal flying, just at, you know, in Indianola or, you know, be in Scottsbluff, you know, down in Shreveport, being able to talk through that. And that's where, to be honest with you, you know, Matt, you know, will always give me a little bit of crap. You know, he says, "Oh, I'm really thinking." Well, I really am, because he's like, "Well, we got to get going. We got to get going. We got to be there, and we need to go right here, right now." And I'll be like, "No, wait a minute. You know, just think through this, because if we do this and we miss this, we're screwed from here on out." You know, so that's where I think, you know, him and I have a really good rapport, where we can absolutely disagree, and we can look at each other and say, "You're absolutely nuts." But yet when it's time to go, we trust each other, and, you know, and we go. So, you know, and I think that's most important. If you're just learning or your first time through that, it'd be great to almost have like a buddy system. So you have that rapport and you have that trust factor with someone.
Yeah, I'd echo what he said. For me, I was going to use the term mentor, you know, somebody, you've never done it, somebody to hook up with that can, you know, bounce ideas off of and kind of show you the ropes. And kind of like what, you know, Todd said, you know, kind of judge your expectations, but I would just say, you know, be willing to fail. You're going to fail. You're going to fail a lot. You know, eventually you'll get it figured out. You know, trial and error, and you know, and also just have fun. You know, I see a lot of people in competition. They just don't look like they're having fun. You know, this is still a game. And, you know, when you land, you can be frustrated for a short amount of time, but then, you know, blow it off and go hang out with your buddies. That's kind of what it is. And your buddies will be there to give you lots of crap too. So that's okay if you screw up.
I agree with Matt. You have to have someone that you can look up to, that's going to help you, give you advice, give you tips. And I had that with Paul Petrin. It's very intimidating for young people like you, Joe, and McKenna and Brad, to think I'm going to go to nationals. Of course, now you have to qualify, but it is intimidating. You have to go, and you have to have someone that will help you, guide you, answer your questions, but you don't want to ask those questions before you fly. You don't want to. Paul let me know right away, do not ask me questions before a flight. I'll answer your questions after a flight and give you tips on what, how maybe you should have flown the task. So you have to have someone that will help you, because if you go in on your own, it's very intimidating with the task. And, you just learn something that you learn Compierre, and then they come up with Aussie, and it's like, I just learned that. Now I gotta try to absorb Aussie. And now with the Balloon Life Sensor, it's something new, we got to, but we're all doing it. So you young people can do it too. I'd say find a mentor. Like Matt said, you have to have a mentor to help you along, and you will fail many times. You will make many mistakes. I remember one of the first competitions I went to, Dave Emmert from Michigan was there, had a bunch of hours. And I only had like 50 hours. And he told me, there's only one difference between you and me. I've made more mistakes. And I remembered that, and that's very true. The longer you're in it, the more mistakes you make, and that's how you learn. So don't be afraid to jump in. Looking from the outside, it is very intimidating. I was there, so find you a mentor, someone that will help you and give you tips and guidance, and you guys can be out there throwing baggies with us.
And Joey, I would even go to the far as say, if you go, or McKenna goes, or Brad goes, when I first started going, you always, the names that are always, the top ones in the sport. The one thing that I always found not, rewarding is after the fact, like what Chris said, hey, after the flight or walking back to the parking lot, every one of those guys and gals have always been very approachable. So, when you did have a question or you didn't understand something, they would take the time to actually sit down and either show you or teach you what their perception was of the correct way, or how the thing is scored, and here's what you had to do. And that's what I think is one of the neatest things, about the sport, is if, I've never had anybody tell me, no, I won't sit down and teach you something. I don't think they're going to tell you all their secrets. I mean, but they're going to help you understand, hey, to get to point A, you've got to do these three things first. And here's how, here's some of the things that I look for. Here's some things that I do. And I think that's been, I remember when we went over to Worlds that first time, I think, Matt and I, and we were scared crapless. I think I can say that for Matt. And, we had some team meetings, and I'm sure we asked a lot of dumb questions. But you can't be afraid to ask. That's the biggest thing, I think.
That is unfortunately all the time we have this week on BurnerCast. I want to thank you guys for joining us tonight on the show. It's been really good talking to you all.
Thank you, Joey.
Thank you.
Look forward to seeing you guys at the Target someday, competing with us.
I hope so. And it was great to meet you all. And thanks for sharing your stories and your advice.
Thanks, McKenna.
Yep. Thank you.
We are going to be welcoming special guest Bill Bussey to join us on the show. You don't want to miss it. We will see you next time on BurnerCast.